Hello and welcome to the Auto Guide Show. This week, Kyle drives a fancy 3-row SUV and a fancier 3-row SUV. I drive one of my favorite cars, and the Charger we've been waiting for is finally here. But first, a word from our sponsor. eBay has reinvented car buying. From click to curb, everything is covered. With their new secure purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your car, it's where you buy it start to finish. Title, financing, registration, delivery, it's all built in. And eligible vehicle purchases are backed by up to $100,000 in protection. This is what modern car buying looks like. Get your next ride on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure Purchase is powered by Carmel Dealer Services, LLC, an eBay subsidiary. Okay, so kicking things off this week, we are going to talk about a first drive that you had been really looking forward to, and did it live up to the hype?
Mostly, yes. I should. It was the 2026 Hyundai Palisade, and I say mostly only because the hybrid powertrain is coming in a few months. So the Palisade, Mike, you and I agree, it's a really good vehicle. When we did the mega comparison with it and the rest of the 3-row segment, when the CX-90 came out 2 years ago, the Palisade won. So it was already one of the better vehicles in the class, and this one updates everything.
Everything. For better or worse. I mean, not like the old Palisade, I would say it was super stylish. It had some interesting angles, and this new one has some interesting angles.
Yeah. So I will say the Palisade looks a lot better in person. I was not sold on the looks at all when it was revealed, and I didn't really look at it at the show floor at New York. So this was my first real time to get up close and personal. And it looks fancy. It looks imposing. The rear 3/4 is very Range Rover, and I mean that in a good way, with the angle of its contrasting D-pillar and the shape of the taillights. The front headlights are doing that thing where they're not actually headlights. The actual headlights are inset, which looks a little weird if you focus on them. But the pattern, the little lines on the outer edges that are the daytime running lights, they use the same.
They do light up. Okay.
Yeah, well, so they do, but they're the same as the Sonata from 2020, where they look like a metallic finish when they're not in use. They only light up when they're turn signals. So it's a really clever design where it looks like metal all the time. So I like that.
Are they white at night though? Like they're clear when you're not turning?
I don't know.
I assume so. If they're the turn signals when you turn.
But, yeah, I would assume. But so it's an interesting design. The cabin is gorgeous. I know we always say that Mazda is the one that does really great interiors, but Hyundai is showing them up. This could be a Genesis interior. It's Napa leather. Everything is really well stocked. There's 3rd-row heated seats. There's 2nd-row ventilated ones. It really is pushing the envelope of what mainstream, or how premium or how luxurious mainstream models can be.
As you and I know, and probably some of our more astute listeners and viewers, when you go on these launches, they bring the fanciest versions. Sometimes they'll bring you other trims, but I'm really curious what will a more regular trim be, because this was like top trim. And did you get a chance to drive the XRT, or is that not there either?
I did, yeah. So I did drive the XRT briefly. We only drove it off-road. It's solid in the sense of like it does do some genuine off-roady things. I'm not sure if it's more or less capable than something like a Pilot Trail Sport, but I think it's more than capable of what most people shopping for a vehicle like this are ever going to do. The only real thing, it went along on paths very well, even though it was hanging a wheel up in the air. Articulation isn't great, but it still goes forward, so I think that's the important thing. There was some transmission slip while we were out on the off-road course. That might be because it was way hotter than it was supposed to be, and so the transmission temps were getting pretty high. But otherwise, I'm with you. I'm curious what the regular models will be like, but I also expect that Hyundai will probably start selling a higher percentage of the top trim.
I'm really, yeah, the transmission thing you're describing, understands the all-wheel drive system because everyone pretty much in this segment, except for, well, Subaru and I don't know anyone else, they have to kind of have a bunch of bends and angles to get the power to the rear wheels, and those aren't overly robust usually, so they can't
Mhm.
overheat or, yeah, I when I had to do demonstrations with these vehicles back in the day, I overheated them on purpose many times, and it just is like, nope, you're a two-wheel drive vehicle now. It still drives, but nothing for
Yeah.
the rear. All right, well, moving on to an all-wheel drive vehicle. Hey, and
Oh.
it's a Subaru. What a segue. So I got to drive the WRX TS. It wasn't our first drive. It was the first time I drove one. We had someone go on the actual first drive. That's a lot of first drives. This is basically last year's TR in the US or RS in Canada. I think I have that right.
Ah.
With yeah, with all the go fast bits, so the big Brembo brake kit, I believe it's 6 pistons up front, the cross trail vented rotors, which is pretty cool, the 19-inch wheels, the really sticky summer tires, all those good bits. But this also includes the WRX GT, which was auto only's adaptive dampers.
Okay.
So it's sort of like a greatest hits package. It's like, hey, here's the stuff from the fancy comfort one, and here's the stuff from the performance one, and you put it all together, and you know what? It works so well because we drove the RS, like, well, the TR. We drove the RS, but
The
same
other
thing.
special edition
Yeah,
WRX.
we drove the sporty one against the GR Corolla last year, I believe it was,
Hmm.
and yeah, it was a good car. It wasn't as raw, and that's the thing. Like, this TS stands for tuned by STI, but this is not an STI. People who keep thinking it is, or that Subaru's trying to make it, like, no, it doesn't have the right transmission. It doesn't have the programmable center diff. Like, there's so many things that it doesn't have that an STI had, but they did tune the suspension differently.
Hmm.
Allegedly, it's an STI tuned suspension, and with the adaptive dampers. Now, WX has never been a smooth riding car. It's been getting better, but the TR was on the stiffer side, and on some roads you're like, ugh. But that's what makes this car so good. Is if you put it in comfort, and there's a manual, not a manual, custom mode. So I
Hmm.
had like suspension and comfort and everything else on hardcore, and it is actually like, I wouldn't quite say family sedan comfortable, but it was way better than I expected. And then when you want to rip it, you just throw it into Sport Plus and off you go. And you know, you stiffen it up and you feel every pebble. But that's sort of what you want on the dirt roads. And um, of course, it's a 6-speed manual only, like it should be, and it has the WX 6-speed. So although it's not programmable, it's 50-50 all the time. So it's really easy to get this car sliding around. Yeah, it's the most expensive, but it's
Yeah.
what it was kind of missing. I've always, for 2 generations, said that this, especially with the auto, which I know is contradictory to what I'm talking about, it appeals to people maybe who want one of those entry level luxury cars but don't quite have the money to go up there. It offers all the same stuff on paper, just in a less sophisticated, less nice interior. And this this now handles the ride quality as well. So,
Yeah.
you want like an A4 or a 340, no, sorry, 330, but you don't have the extra 10, 15,000 to spend. Well, if you don't mind some hard plastics and some growly noises, and you get a manual, which those don't always offer. So there you go. But yeah, I'm impressed. It's just it's an old car. Like, it's not old. It's only been out a couple of years, but it's an
Yeah.
old formula with a new nicety added.
That's fair. I was gonna make a joke about how like it's far away from a luxury car because Subarus and interiors and stuff. But when I stop to think about it, yeah, there's not a lot that really does this anymore, right? Because something like a Golf R uh, does give you that, but it's not a sedan, and it's auto only now. And then all the hot hatches that have a manual are just really extreme. Like an Elantra N is not ever going to be something that people take for a nice cruise late at night with a yeah. It's too childish. The Type R, same thing. The GR Corolla. So yeah, I guess this is kind of. It's funny to think of the WRX as the mature choice, but it
Yeah.
kind of is now.
Well, that started with last gen, and it made a lot of sense because you had the STI to go against the Civic Type Rs and the Golf Rs if you wanted hardcore performance. So the WRX, they noticed because they put the auto in, it started being cross-shopped with a lot of the cars I said, A4s, 330, C classes. Not directly cross-shopped, but people who were kind of aspiring to that, but couldn't make it work, were picking these up. So it kind of got softer to go for those people. And then it killed the STI. So now Subaru's almost going full Ford Mustang with this, where every year it's like, here's another special version. But to Subaru's credit, like the Mustang, they're actually doing stuff. Like it's a lot of the same parts, but they're mixing and matching. It's not just here's a new paint color that brand was guilty of in the past. Although that orange 2014 WRX was pretty cool.
It was. Well, so you heard it here on the Auto Guide show first. The WRX is the Japanese Mustang. Anyway.
I have a Genesis Coupe, and I say that's the Korean muscle car.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. You are familiar with the breed.
Yeah. So moving on to something completely different to what we've been talking about. You drove the Cadillac Escalade, but not the Escalade.
In ways, I would argue this is the proper Escalade. With a giant asterisk, a 9,000-pound asterisk, if you will.
A 200 kilowatt hour asterisk.
Yeah, it's a lot. And you know what? As a colleague said when I had posted about this week, that's what the Escalade's always been, a lot. So in a way, this kind of makes sense. Over 200 kilowatt hours, 680 horsepower, 750 in velocity max mode. Power opening and closing doors. This one had the executive package for the second row, which is something like $9,000. And it adds a big center console with its own control screen and power adjustable seats. And I think that's just about it. Well, and screens. But like, I don't know why it's that much money. And it also makes the third row useless. It's enormous. I wanted to like this, even though I don't like this sort of vehicle. Because to me, a big luxury vehicle makes sense as an EV, right? Like it's smooth and quiet. And it was a really great ride, even on enormous 24-inch wheels. A few problems. The price, it is 160,000 US, or just shy of 200,000 in Canada, which is more than what most gas Escalades go for, although less than an Escalade V. And I think the Escalade V is especially silly. So this kind of makes sense compared to that. And then the other thing was that I actually just had a lot of quality control issues with this. There were a lot of creaks and rattles in the interior, probably because it's 9,000 pounds. And I had weird glitches with the doors and with the screens, and just, it didn't feel like it should be worth as much as they're charging.
That's not great to hear. I've wondered for a while if, even though it looks the same, how different the software and more so the hardware providers are for GM's EVs to the regular cars. Because like every Cadillac regular car I've driven, we don't have those problems. But then, and same with a lot of the other GM products. But then with the EVs, we've had some. But I fully agree with you. This is like pure Escalade. Because when the Escalade and Navigator came out in the late 90s, there was nothing like them. Like the only way you got a big luxury SUV was a Range Rover. Like Mercedes and BMW were barely making SUVs, period, and they weren't making things this big. And both Americans were like, we're going to take our biggest SUV, like the Expedition and the Suburban, and throw in 17 cows worth of leather and, you know, every luxury we know how to make and shove it in. And that's what they've done here. Is like, oh, you guys are making fancy EVs? Well, we're going to take the biggest EV platform we have and shove every luxury bit we have in it. So,
yeah,
you know what? It will never sell as well as the Escalade, but I think it's smart on Cadillac's part because there is a segment and a buyer for this. So
yeah. And luxury brands can do EVs a little easier because people are already paying premiums. So I really think this does make sense. It's just if they can fix the quality things.
Yeah, and it's nothing we haven't heard from its siblings, but on the positive side, like that's how they can do this, is it's splitting the cost with the Hummer and the Silverado EV and the Sierra EV. So yeah, this is sort of what the Escalade's always been. It's the fancy version of those vehicles. So you got an off-road one, a fancy one, and 2 pickup trucks. I don't know what you need next.
I also have to point out that I did not actually try the crab walk mode. I didn't. Although having rear axle steering makes this very easy to park in my otherwise
Oh yeah.
pretty tight underground parking. So.
Oh yeah, the Hummer EV and the two Silverado EVs I've had, it's like it's such a game changer for something that size. Then you get it like even a regular car after, and you're like, oh, this doesn't maneuver around. And I did try the crab walk and the sidewinder, I think is what they call it in the Chevy. All right, so moving on from reviews to pretty much the biggest news of the week, because it's Woodward, it's muscle cars, it's all that good stuff, and Dodge officially finally introduced the gasoline-powered versions of the Charger. So the six packs, as they call them, because they have the turbo inline six making an ungodly amount of power for a 3-liter inline six. So you get what is it? I think it's 425 in the RT and 550 in the Scat Pack. So that's more than the 6.4 made in the old SRT. Although I think by the end, what did they call them by then? Were they're
392s?
There's Scat Packs and there was just SRTs.
Oh yeah, there were different names for different models. It was very confusing.
But anyway, that thing made just under 500 horsepower, and this makes more power, more torque. It's probably the most powerful 3-liter inline six on sale right now, I think. It ups the Jeep and the Ram's numbers by 10 horsepower.
It does. It is the most powerful inline six if you're not counting any electrified options.
Yeah, I'm just talking straight up. Yeah, if you electrify this, you could probably get to 750.
Well,
no problem.
Yeah, the vehicle I'm driving this week has more power, but for the comparison that I always use is who else makes a 3-liter inline six? BMW. What's the highest power you can get for that? 543 currently.
And that's like in
a special edition M4 CS.
Like position it like this is a crazy handcrafted out of plutonium engine, and all the fans are like, oh, it's so, and then Dodge is like, we're putting 540 in our pickup trucks, 550 in this big sedan. But besides the engine, I like the styling. I mean, I like the styling of the Daytona, but what do they call that front? The
arrow.
Which was functional and kind of cool. They're trying to sort of not make a nose cone, but to still pay tribute to the original Daytona Chargers. But this has the more traditional front end, and it's got a bit of a hood bulge. And I mean, I've been saying on the show for months, like I've been looking forward to see what this is like, because it is such a good car. And the EV is good too, but we know there's a limited market for that very specific, massive American coupe or sedan, all electric. So not that this is going to sell in huge numbers, but now you have to help me if I get this wrong, but I believe it's just under 50 for the RT and it's 55 for the Scat Pack, which obviously there'll be a ton of options to add on, but as a starting price, like that's a lot of power for the price in today's world. Like cars are expensive. I mean, 550 horsepower for 55 grand.
Yeah, Dodge's presentation. Look, they know their audience and they know their products. Everything was focused on most horsepower per dollar. That's
the American muscle car way.
Right. And I'm like, okay, I guess that makes sense. Like if people want, when the old Charger went out of production, it was the most powerful sedan you could get under 50K. So Dodge is just keeping tradition here. And they also lowered the MSRP on the electric one too, if I remember right. And so
the base one,
everything is slightly more affordable.
And you get all-wheel drive with the Scat Pack, which is great because
defeatable all-wheel drive.
Yeah, just like the electric, which made sense because that was multi-motor. But that's cool. So you can do burnouts and drifts, but you can also then go to all-wheel drive, and it's like 0 to 60 under 4 seconds. Like it's pretty impressive sports car numbers in this massive, heavy American car. And in the presentation, I really like how they had to pay tribute to their new heritage of street takeovers, where they had 2 cars drift around a guy standing in the middle. Because if you ever saw those videos, it's always Chargers and Challengers, usually stolen. But that seems to be and clapped out Infinity G's.
Yeah, they must have practiced that a few times because watching him hand the phone off, I was like, please don't. So
it's all fun and games until you run over the CEO of Dodge or whatever he was, president.
I do like how this looks, and I think part of it is also the larger air intake below the main grille. Like I think that kind of balances the look. I mean, I'm curious. I still haven't driven the EV one. You've driven it in 2 and 4-door form, so
but both limited. I've never got to live with it, and I really want to do that.
Yeah,
both
we
on like
need to
first
do
drives.
that. Maybe we need to do both of them at the same time.
Yeah,
Gas
and I
and
mean,
EV.
I like the way the lights are. It's really old Charger look. Like the lights are in there, but it looks like they're the flip ones like they had across the grill. But just like the old Challenger, like I didn't like it at first. A lot of people didn't. And the Camaro and Mustang were more raw and handled better and blah blah blah. But I grew to really appreciate it because it was just a big, silly, noisy car that was comfy and just you had a childish grin driving it because it just spoke to your immatureness, and that's what I loved about it. And this, I think, will be the same, but with
Yeah,
way more sophistication. So,
yeah.
and the interior is ridiculous. Like it's really cool. So this is not going to be a huge seller, but this is going to be the one that will hopefully help Dodge turn the um,
It'll sell
bald
better
spokes
than
back
the
to
current
black.
one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
although they're being built in Canada, I think, so that might hurt some money, but that's a
Oh, what's
discussion.
that all about?
Yeah. So our final news story, because we do have a special guest and some other segments coming up, is Mercedes. We knew killed the egg for the EQs. I wasn't. I didn't think it was terrible like some people did. It didn't work on the sedans to me. The SUVs a little more, but it was odd when you saw how nice BMW's eyes are. Well, not all of them. Most of BMW's eyes are.
I would say all of them. I think the
Yeah.
i7 is a
Sorry,
statement.
I was thinking the XM, but that's not an I. That's an XM. So
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Okay. Yes, you're right. Yes, the I. Yeah, their statements and Audi's done a pretty good job with their EVs. I think Mercedes was trying to be too Tesla-ish with the Mercedes spin, and it just didn't translate.
I think the problem was that they just look cheap. You can do really aerodynamic designs, but in a way that can still be expressive, as the Koreans have shown, or Rivian, or Lucid. Whereas, yeah, the Mercedes, it didn't really feel like a Mercedes, and I feel like that's such a cop out to say. But this, what we're going to talk about right now, does.
Yeah, just to your point, that whole very airy flow jelly bean shape was ruined in the 90s by the Ford Taurus. Like it was weird on its own, but it was distinct and different. But now you can't not see that in anyone who tries that look. So yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, the new look, it is going to debut on their GLC with EQ technology, because that's how they're calling them now, right? They're no longer the EQC is like that was kind of hard to understand. I know BMW is doing but it's closer, so whatever. It's the
Yeah.
all electric GLC sized vehicle. It's
There we
not even the same vehicle, because like everyone who makes EVs pretty much, except for BMW, they're on different platforms.
go.
So yeah, yeah. So it's back to a more traditional shape, but it has the big upright grille. But Mercedes was like, some people illuminate their logos, and the odd one are illuminating the grille surround. We're going to illuminate the entire grille. I'd have to look it up, but there's something like 960 separate little lights in the grille that all light up. And basically, for those that aren't watching, it's got a 2-bar design with a giant 3-star in the middle. And it's not the bars that light up, it's all the background. And
Everything else.
the logo does light up, and so does the surround. And the surround has chrome as well, because Mercedes had to make a point that that's been a trademark of their cars for like a century, is they have the chrome around the grille. So it's like chrome light, more lights, logo with lights. So I really want to see what this looks like at night, because it's obviously not going to be overly bright, because it can't. But looking at the teaser image, it looks like, I sure hope not, but it looks like they might have daytime running lights up near the hood, which means headlights might be separate below. I'm hoping they're attached to that component, but
It looks like the current GLC headlight,
okay.
or very close to it. So it doesn't look like a separated headlight. Yeah,
but it'd be weird. Like you're talking about the Palisade with its sort of lights that we don't know where light up. This thing at night, you're gonna have the eyebrows, the headlights, and then this giant light up grill with the Mercedes outline grill inside. I mean, it could look really cool, and you won't mistake it for anything on the road. Let's say that. Just like how VW lights up all their grills now, and you can tell there's a VW. I don't know what it is, but I see the logo light up.
Yeah, and now I'm seeing people adding LED strips like under their hood line, to try and make it look like their headlights are connected. Okay. Yeah, I've seen it a lot with older cars. People are just putting a strip of LEDs. Yeah, but like under the lip of their hood, which is awful looking. So I don't like that this trend has taken off in this way. But Yeah, it's. Do you remember the meme from a while back where it was like car headlights were getting further and further up the hood,
Mhm.
and then grills were getting bigger and logos are getting bigger, and so the idea was like, in 2050 we'll just be driving around these giant logos. No, we're just going to be driving around. The entire front end of the car is just going to light up, like everything.
Now, yeah, and like Mercedes is there, but at the same time, those are like, wow, like look at this crazy trend Mercedes starting. I was a teenager in the 90s and a kid in the 80s. GM had full width light bars on a ton of their products, but those are actual like physical lights. There are headlights and like 6 more lights in the grill, and
Yeah,
I think Ford had a couple too. But
the Mercury Mystique.
The
The
full
Mystique
light
had the
up
full
front
light
end.
bar.
Yeah, Pontiac was the biggest offender of this style. I kind of liked it actually, the old Grand Prix and stuff, but it's not new. It's just different. But the one thing we haven't discussed yet that we really need to is there are animations that this grill can do. And with 960 lights, I'm thinking, how long, if Mercedes doesn't jailbreak it themselves, will somebody? And you can start like making anything you want, because it's like a little dot matrix. You could put some like probably get some pretty good images there, so you can just put whatever you want on the grill when you approach the car when you're driving.
The question is, of course, with
Make it
something
like a
like
middle
that.
finger. That'd be cool.
Yeah, well,
If
that's
someone cuts
that's
you
the
off,
thing. It's
your
like
grills.
the question is, with this being a German brand and they love subscription models for features, will they charge a subscription fee for you to be able to pick from different designs like Kia does? The mini taillights can be modified into a few different things, but they're all preset, right? So
There's like 3, I think.
yeah, someone is definitely turning this. What'll be really cool is maybe you can play like Pong or something on the grill.
Video games.
Yeah,
Double Dragon. Yeah. So not that I want to give them any more ideas, but I think you're onto something. DLC subscription. There could be an animation of the month you subscribe to. There could be loot boxes where you don't know which one you get. There's like legendaries and rares and ultra rares, and
you
see someone really like, cool. Oh, that guy's got the legendary on his car.
It could be really cool to show your charging progress.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they have to do that, but
yeah,
I would assume there's some sort of law to the limit of what you can have your front lights doing as you're driving down the road. But
probably,
obviously, you can't make them strobe or flash because that looks like an emergency vehicle. But yeah. Anyway, it's a whole new world. I look forward to all these EQ technologies because, as we said, this is the new look. So I assume this grill is going on everything with the lights. So yeah,
it's Mercedes world. We just live in it.
Light up everything soon. Yeah, you're right. Hoods, fenders, everything. Everything was. Well, wasn't it BMW who had the car that you could like change colors by pushing a button?
Oh, and yes. And they also had these very cool light up wheels on the essentially like the future EV M3 concept. And it could show like funky patterns while you were driving. We're ready for a whole new level of distraction with cars.
People did that in the 90s. They put LED valve step covers on their wheels, and then when you drove, they just... I didn't do that, but I don't even want to discuss the things I did do to my car back then. Blame Paul and Vin. Okay, so moving on with the Auto Guide show brought to you by eBay Motors, we are going to take a break, and then Kyle and I'll be back with a special guest who I'll talk about modifying cars. It's a good segue because he's a legend in the scene. And then I'll be back with Colum. It's the break right now for F1, so we're just going to have some fun speculating about things and sort of winners and losers of the year. Then Kyle will be back to help me wrap things up. So we'll see you in a little bit.
eBay has reinvented vehicle buying. From click to curb, everything's covered. It's all thanks to their new secure purchase. Ever try to buy a car and end up in a parking lot with a stranger on some blind trust? Or spend half the day at a dealership talking to pushy salespeople and signing paperwork? Or maybe worst of all, wait hours at the DMV just to transfer the title? That era is over. For years, eBay has been the go-to for gearheads, collectors, and DIYers. Because whatever you're into, from classics to SUVs and trucks to imports, eBay's got it. And now with Secure Purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your next ride, it's where you can buy it, start to finish. Sellers and titles are verified, paperwork is handled by experts, and payments are traceable and digital, so you know exactly who you're dealing with and exactly what you're getting. Plus, you can finance, insure, and register your vehicle all in one place. No more hours at the dealership. No more trips to the DMV. Get your vehicle, plates, and paperwork shipped to your door ready to drive. And it's all part of one seamless process designed to feel as easy as buying anything else online. And eligible vehicles purchased on eBay are backed by up to $100,000 in purchase protection. Thinking about selling a ride? Secure Purchase makes that simple too, because you know your buyer and their funds are verified. If you still owe on your car, the financing payoff is fully integrated, so you're not chasing paperwork or waiting on checks to clear. And with Secure Purchase, you get paid fast, and you're not going to be stuck chasing no-shows or answering the fifth, still available messages. This is what modern car buying looks like. Skip the DMV, skip the sketchy meetups. Buy it on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure Purchase is powered by Carmel Dealer Services, LLC, and eBay subsidiary. Okay, so welcome back. And like I said, we have a special guest who has a long history in the auto industry. If you could just introduce yourself and what you do.
Oh, boy. Wow, you really built me up there. Yeah. My name's John Naderi, otherwise known as Nads, worst nickname ever. Yeah, I've been doing this for quite a while. Started out just being passionate about cars. I think I could trace my earliest origin story to what else but Bigfoot. I fell in love with a picture in a magazine, if anybody even knows what that is. And it was Bob Chandler parked on a bunch of other cars with the Predator carbs sticking out of the hood and 48-inch tires. And I'm like, this is insane. And my dad enabled that. He bought an old F-150 bump side for us to sort of build up together and everything. And from there, I was off to the races. As I grew up, I got more into I started off in the San Fernando Valley, and that brought me into just Van Nuys Boulevard. If anybody knows what that is, it was just American graffiti and everything from hot rods to lowriders. And I looked at all these people. They had the cigarettes rolled up in the sleeve, and I just did not look like I belonged with those people. And there was some people with a 240Z, a 510, BMW 2002, and I was on my BMX bike, and they go, "Nice bike, kid." And I'm like, "These are my people." And ever since then, I've found that there is a replacement for displacement. So just very big in the sport compact market, and just all of my passion went into that. And I wanted to get a job at Automotive Magazine, and landed at Peterson Publishing, which the first ones to put hot rods and women on the cover of a magazine, and Wally Park and Robert Peterson and all of that. And I started at a small magazine, and eventually left to do a .com. And then from there, I came back to be the editor of Super Street Magazine. I started a YouTube channel in 2007 called Rice Boy TV, a little bit of a too soon junior moment. I brought Time Attack to the United States. I was one of the first people to put a drift car on the cover of a magazine. I was one of the first journalists, Western journalists in the sport compact market, to go to Japan frequently and feature all the brands like HKS, Reddy, Blitz, Apex Integration, all of that golden era of tuning, you'll say. Left to do that, to do the YouTube thing a little bit too early. Ended up at doing Time Attack, and then that got me involved with a person named Ken Block. And from there, I went on to help build Hoonigan as a brand, and very fortunate to be there with Brian Scotto and the entire crew, and got thrust in front of the camera and became the world's oldest YouTube influencer in the Honda market. And then sort of been bouncing around ever since. I had stints at Saatchi & Saatchi, working at copywriting for Toyota of all brands, and doing all things Prius, which, shoot me in the head, was very challenging, but it was a very, very good time. And then somehow ended up back at Hoonigan, and then did a TV show of all things for Super Street. And now I'm a creative director in the automotive space. I work at a brand called Apex Wheels, and still keep my toe firmly dipped in the automotive aftermarket, and work with brands like SEMA and Mother's Polish, and possibly writing a book coming up soon. And that was way too long about everything that I've done, but I've been around for a while and still passionate about it.
It's a long list.
17.
You gotta expand on it. No, it makes sense.
You covered like 17 questions for us, so that's good. We can talk about other things too now. So most people will know you from your Hoonigan days, especially on YouTube, or if they're into Hondas at all in any sense, they'll know you through there. So it's one of these we don't need to introduce you, but that's that's like living the car guy. I don't know if you'd say the dream, but the like ideal life where you're constantly just moving around and doing car things and one challenge after the next. Maybe not the Prius thing. Hopefully you got to work on the Prius when it was the new one and it was cool and not the last gen. But
you know what? It's funny. It was what's the bumper sticker? Cool Prius, attributed to nobody, and that when the third generation came out, it was after my time. But I was at Hoonigan and we were at the show and everybody was talking about it. And I'm like, oh, it looks kind of cool in the photos. And I saw it and I was like, I wish I could have been there when that design. I mean, they actually made a Prius look good. So kudos to Toyota.
Yeah, and it drives a lot nicer too. They did a good job.
It really does. It really does.
100%. Maybe the generation you worked on was the one that did the Super GT. I mean, I know it wasn't really.
Yeah, I wanted to do that. I mean, there was a sub brand that we were trying to get off the ground that was sort of like the heartbeat of Toyota sort of thing. It was called Wakadoki, which is like a Japanese for passionate, what makes your heart race, essentially, like sort of like a play off of Chevrolet's, Heartbeat of America sort of thing. And it was all about the enthusiasm for Toyota on the whole. And I was supposed to spearhead that. And I was, please put me in charge of that. But the GT car was on the list as well as just everything else. And couldn't get it off the ground, unfortunately. So, yeah.
There's an alternate universe where it did happen, though. So
yeah. I know. I would like to think so.
That is one of the coolest race cars ever made, where you take this
100%.
pedestrian hybrid and you throw an engine in the back and off you go.
I love, like, speaking of that, if you go back to like JTCC and then JGTC and then now it's Super GT and now it's kind of going away, but that racing series to me was just the pinnacle of Japanese tuning. There was talk where JGTC was supposed to mesh with DTM, and to me that would have been all of my worlds colliding. They had the rules packages sort of aligned for a little while, but that would have been just something else if they could have done that.
Yeah, no, I was really looking forward to that too. And then when they went to the GT3 regulations, I thought that would help it, but it's kind of, I guess, diluted things because there's so many
a little bit
categories.
I thought that would help too, but it somehow made it. Yeah, Japan's such in terms of everything from manufacturing techniques to fashion to the types of cars, it's so insular. It's so hard to like branch out and then commingle. You have seen some cases where the aftermarket or what is it, California's NUMMI plant where General Motors and Toyota sort of blended together, but beyond that, it's tough to when you try to open up those borders. That walled garden does not respond well to outside influence.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, like from back in the 90s, from when I was younger and starting to get interested in cars, is I think about how Japanese models, especially Lexus, was always accused of not really having its own design language, right? By spreading out, they were trying to appease these other markets. And I mean, now you look at it, and I think all the Japanese brands, as far as I'm concerned, have really found their own distinct styling language and are proud of their heritage. Now we're seeing that in the Korean brands as well.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, Genesis is the perfect example of that offshoot to do that. And it's the same thing with Lexus. When it first came out, they were trying to be the Cadillac of Japan, with greater reliability. And it took some time, but I feel like here in the United States, we expect everything to happen right now. It's the way we want our food. It's the way we want our furniture assembled. It's the way everything. But in Japan, they had it's that 100-year plan where it's like things take a lot longer, but when they come to fruition, they really do.
Mm-hmm. So I guess we'll wander over to Honda because that's where a lot of people, like I said, know you from. So you've built countless Hondas or modified or been involved with. Do you still keep up with the modern Honda now that like everything's gone computer and touchscreen and turbo Civics and?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that question. Well, first of all, I'm not a builder. I'm an enthusiast, and I have built Hondas, but the Hondas that I build are more like Legos, where you could kind of assemble them and they sort of snap together. So that's what's so beautiful about when you get into Hondas. I won't say like a lot of the world's premier Honda builders now are using like traditional hot rod techniques where they're fabricating and they're really going in depth with everything. But for me, it's like, oh, I bought a part, I put the part on the car, I bolt the part, and now it's ready to go. But my passion, at my age, I'm older, and it lies firmly entrenched in the golden era of Japanese cars and Hondas as well. So if you look at like the venerable Honda Civic, I have a sixth generation. It's an EJ6 is the chassis code, but everybody calls it an EK, and I wouldn't even call it a Type R clone. I would call it an homage to the Civic Type R. And if you looked at the Type R ethos back when they came out with the Civic and the NSX and the Integra Type R, they were visually not like a 911 Turbo or not like a BMW M car. You couldn't. It's tough to distinguish a Type R from a to the trained eye or even to the enthusiastic eye. I would say, of course, I could tell the difference, but most people would say, oh, that's like a little Integra, that's like a little Civic. It's like, this has thinner window glass and the engine revs to 9,000 RPM. No one cares about that. If you look at the car, it really doesn't look much different. And that was what was so cool about it. It was that venerable wolf in sheep's clothing. And the current generation Civics, if you look at like the previous generation Civic Type R, the FK8, or the current generation, the FL5, they've sort of gotten that, this is me, my dated lingo is like boy racer look, where it's kind of the bulging, blistering fenders and the bigger wing. And it's sort of screams, look at me, for the amount of money that you spend, and turbocharged and a lot of driver aids, which is the way, if you weigh a Civic now to what a Civic weighed back then, like my car, the interior stripped in my car, and I've done all sorts of ridiculous modifications to it, but my car soaking wet, is a little over 2,000 pounds. You'll never get into a Civic now for something. But then my car has no crumple zones, I'm the crumple zone in my Civic. So if something happens in my car, that's what I'd be involved in. So for me, and as much as I appreciate the technology and the Nürburgring laps, I think they're deep into the 7 minutes now. A Civic, which is amazing and impressive and wonderful, from a front wheel drive car, no less. And I don't know if you guys are following, but Red Bull Racing is going over from Honda to Ford. So I feel like I could say this now, but they recently had Jason Harris driving with Max Verstappen, and he said driving a front wheel drive is like the anti-car. It's like not driving a car. And I take huge exception to that. So as much as I love Max, I'm like, come on, man. But that whole thing, to me, I feel like those versions of the cars, the newer cars, even the latest generation of the NSX compared to the first and second generation of the NSX, to me, I just feel like it's like a Mecha Godzilla. Same thing with the R35 GTR compared to the Go. These are better cars by leaps and bounds. But to me, it's like that's where I grew up and that's the era I had. I feel like the guy who pines for the 57 Chevy when someone is driving around in a fifth gen Camaro or something like that. And somebody's like, that's not the same as the cars that I had. It's just, those are the cars that I grew up with, and those are the cars that I love. And that's where I'm like firmly entrenched in that. Now, a lot of people are saying, you're getting your high school car. And I was a little older by the time, when the Civic came around, I was more like a college kid. But I will still argue that, yeah, that's probably what a lot of people are doing right now. So for me, I know the new cars are better. I know a new generation of an M3 is better. But to me, if I look at like the E30, E36, or E46 M3s, even the E9Xs, they just feel more identifiable to me, if that makes sense.
I think we're all on the same page there. I think that happens with a lot of us, right? Like your music tastes kind of crystallize in your early 20s. And I feel like if you're a car enthusiast, it's the same thing, where if you grew up with certain cars, that's just it. Like those are the ones that you're always going to pine for.
Yep. Yeah, that's so true. That was so well put. Yeah.
So then
sorry, go on.
No, you go ahead, Mike. I have something.
I was just gonna say, and it's the era of car we're in too. Like if you grew up in the 70s, in the 80s and 90s, there's some cool innovation and cars got better. But with the, like you said, the safety technology and all the computers, like you can't make them light. And we're in the era of 1,200 horsepower Corvettes that you can go and just buy off a Chevy dealer, and like things have just gotten ridiculous right now. So getting back in those sort of analog cars, like last year I got to drive a 90 Miata. I used to own one, and just getting back in that, you're like, oh, this is just such a great car to drive. It's just so much joy.
You feel so connected to it. I had my car. I've removed all the sound deadening from it, so I basically have just carpet in the front end. I've taken out the. I've deleted the air conditioning. I've deleted the power steering. You know, I'm regretting a couple of those moves now, but the power steering delete on its own is just such a wonderful connected feeling to the road. And you know, when you talk about like first generation Miatas, my oldest is driving now, and she's a mini me in every way. And she wanted nothing more than a first generation Miata because she fell in love with the pop-up headlights. And I said, you know, technically the NB is a little bit better. It sort of cleans up everything. And we found a happy medium where I found her an NA that was a STO edition 97 that had the 1.8 liter. So I'm like, so at least she got into the bigger engine, but she's just in love with it. We deleted the power steering for her and everything, and she went with manual rack. And I go, you're going to have a hard time parallel parking. She goes, I don't care. And she loves it. And she bombs around with it, and she's cambered it out a little too much for my my desires, and my
kids
a little too low for my, but you know, kids being kids, you know.
Yeah. So what I was going to ask, as someone who obviously has a soft spot for Hondas, how did you feel about the Integra Type R that sold for 200,000 recently?
Yeah, that's, you could ask that about anything now. It was the Mark IV Supra that went for, you know, I want to say cross the gavel at like 127 or something like that. That Integra was pretty ridiculous. I wanted to say if that came from Peter Cunningham's collection. I'm not entirely sure.
But although he wasn't the first owner.
He wasn't the first owner, right? It came in, but it still had ridiculously low mileage. And it's part of it is neat and troubling to see. And one of my other passions is that I do terribly is surfing. And I saw a sticker on at a surf shop. It said "Quit surfing," and I thought it was really cute because in Southern California, surfing is super impacted. You go to the beach on the weekends, and everybody's trying to surf. You know, so I thought it was great, and it made me think like that's the way I feel now about the Honda world, because not only the prices are driven up. They used to call it the drift tax back in the day when it clapped out, you know, S chassis like a 240 SX. Used to be, this is a terrible car. It's a terrible car. It was a truck motor, the KA24, and it was just, you know, but the drifters fell in love with it, and it came from Japan and came over here, and people would start modifying it. And it used to be like, you know, sitting parked in a, you know, fully running 1,500 or best offer. And now it's like 8,500, no low ballers. I know what I've got, you know, and that's the transition to that. We're seeing that in all of these markets, from, you know, Porsche G bodies to BMWs to Hondas. All these golden era cars are just going, like, the prices are going crazy right now. I mean, look at people that are paying, you know, all kudos to my friends at Top Rank, Sean and the crew, but they import all the GTRs, and they have, you know, 50 state emissions legal vehicles, but the prices for, you know, and if you've driven an old GTR, it's not a special experience by any means, but if you feel connected to that era and you want that car, the prices are deep into the six figures now to try to get anything for all those 25-year cars, which, you know, the imports in to bring a car in from Japan for a JDM, a Japanese domestic model right-hand drive, after 25 years, it becomes more accessible. So people are waiting for the when you talk about S chassis, the S15 to become, which it's starting to, that's the next one that's gonna happen. So seeing the way they cross the block, which is, it's the same thing when we talk about fashion and clothes and the cars of our youth, where, you know, you'd see like the restored, you know, Camaro or 57 Chevy that are crossing the block at Barrett Jackson. Now we're starting to see, you know, DC2 Type Rs that are like, people are like, oh my God, I can't believe it. There was before that, I want to say it was a 2000 Civic Si. It was a blue EM1 that went for over 100,000, and everybody's like, okay, that's it, game over. It's this this is getting to be ridiculous, you know. And people are selling vintage Japanese like Mugen wheels for, you know, 8,000. They're like 5x the price of the cars. You know, there's a gauge cluster made by a company called Spoon Sports. It's a Civic Type R, so it revs to 9,000 RPM, but it's a Spoon Sports version of that Type R cluster, and that going on the open market, some of them are selling for $15,000. Gauge cluster. That's the gauge cluster, you know? So to me, I'm like, it's kind of gotten out of hand, but you know, what are you going to do? You know?
Yeah. You know, you nailed it. Like 20, 25 years ago, when I was, you know, teenager into my early 20s, yeah, Barrett Jackson blew up the muscle car scene because all of people my parents' age could afford them finally. And I remember, like, I like muscle cars. I still do as well. And I always thought, like, oh, same thing, like, oh, an old 442 also be like, you got that for like 20 grand. This would be cool. And then all of a sudden it's 200 grand going across the auction. Like, oh, those dreams are over. And same thing. All these cars I probably couldn't afford it back in the day, but I maybe could have if I tried to make it work. I couldn't even touch today because
now you can't even get there anymore. Yep.
Like, even I had something with super obscure, an SVX about 12 years ago, and I bought that amazing condition for $7,000, and that now is probably 25, and it's just not worth it. Just one more thing you brought up that I want to go back to is, if we're talking about Integras and Peter Cunningham, I think he did so, like, the most probably anybody did to get the Type R name known in North America with his real-time racing. Like, that's still an icon. I got to go tour the Honda Museum, and they have the NSX and the Integra there. And that's like the first thing I went to. And the guy was like, you care about that the most? I said, you have no idea. These are like legends when I grew up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's royalty.
100%. One of the best, I will also argue, one of the best liveries of U.S. Honda. You know, it was like so identifiable. Pierre Kleinebing was like one of my heroes back in the day. And I don't know how this happened, but it was less popular. But along the 2000s, they started campaigning a DC5, Acura RSX Type S, and it was in the real-time livery. And they had one that was just pure body in white that they offered journalists to drive at the streets of Willow Springs in Southern California. We all went out there, and there was a kid, I want to say his name was Jazz. I think he passed in a motorcycle accident years later. And so honored to have some time with him. And everybody went out, and we got to lap a race car, a real deal. It was front-wheel drive RSX, but it was stripped-down version, real-time, World Challenge race car, and ran it around the streets of Willow. And everybody got to drive 5 laps and then come in, and then, you know, you had radio and comms and everything. And we were all journalists. None of us were real shoes back then. And come in, and then, you know, then everybody stopped, and then you could talk to the engineers and talked to Peter, and Peter was there, and I got to meet him. And then they said after lunch, if anybody wants to drive, and it got a little hot. A lot of the other journalists were a little older. They didn't want to drive. And I said, oh, I'd like to drive. So I drove 5 laps, and then I just sort of pulled in, and he goes, hey, what's going on? You know? And I'm like, I don't know. I thought I was only supposed to go 5 laps. And he looks around, he goes, no one else wants to drive. So if you want, we could top off the fuel and just go until you see the fuel light come on. And I got to do literally endless laps in a real-time RSX, and it was like one of my dream days. And I drove that thing until it ran out of gas. It was just awesome time.
Yeah, I still to this day like Gran Turismo. If I get in a NSX or an Integra, I put on the real-time livery. Always.
The real-time livery, yep, exactly. Yep. So my kid is my kid plays Forza, and she's always making her own liveries, and she shows me the hacks and everything. But before she even got into cars, when I was at Hoonigan, she's, you know, modifying her car. And at the time she wanted a Mini Cooper, which I was like really heartbroken. She goes, this is kind of like your car. And I'm like, it's a front-wheel drive hatchback, but it's nothing like Dad's car, you know? And one day I casually walked by her, and there was a Hoonigan download pack, and she's driving as Ken Block, you know? And I'm like, hey, that's your dad's boss. And she goes, he's real? And I said, yeah. And I showed her all the Gymkhana films and let her dive down that world. And then that's how she really kind of flipped the switch for her. But it's amazing when you talk about, like, my generation was Gran Turismo. It's like those cars. And, you know, I had a chance to meet Kazunori Yamauchi, the founder, the godfather of the game, and asked him what his where his first inspiration was, and he goes, "It was a car I saw driving on the streets of Japan when I was a child, and of all things, it was a Mark III Supra." And I had a Mark III Supra at the time. I was like, "That's my car. I have that car." And it was like slammed on HRA wheels, and he's like, "That's one of my favorite designs," which I'll question his design language, but I was so honored and so happy to hear that Kazunori-san loved the Mark III Supra.
Yeah, I've met him a couple times too, and yeah, every time it's funny because most people will be like, "Who is that?" And to us, it's like, "Oh my goodness, there he is!" Like, I don't know even what to say to him because
Exactly.
I grew up on that game.
Yeah. I think we've all met him a few times, so that's a fun little common thing. For me, I met him first at a Jalopnik Film Festival in New York City back in 2013, and I think Ken Watt was there too, actually, as a speaker. And they were doing a preview showing of Rush, and I knew Kazunori was going to be there. I brought a copy of Gran Turismo 1 to get him to sign. And, he had to go out and have a smoke. But when he comes back into we were at one of the garages in New York, and when he came back in to sign, he's looking around on a flat surface to finds an original GT40 and just plunks it down on the roof and signs there. And I'm just like, wow, okay, I love this. Such like the impact that he's had on car enthusiasm, right? Is like, you could argue that Gran Turismo made the WRX and Evo things in North America.
100%. 100%. It helped usher in like all their, the aftermarket brands that they highlighted and the obscure, like, JDM only models that they highlighted and like exposed them to an entire generation of car enthusiasts was amazing. I had another opportunity to go to Japan and go to Polyphony Studios, and we met at, I can't even remember now, some racetrack, and they wanted to show us how they developed the game. And right then 3D modeling was starting to get in, and you could like model with a Faro arm scanner and everything. And I was like, okay, I really want to see this process. Nope, they pull the car into like a little white tent, like a three box tent, and there was some guy with a digital camera that's just like taking pictures of every angle of the car, and that's how they modeled it, old school style. And they would actually drive the cars around the racetrack with a mic over the boom over the exhaust and record the exhaust sounds to try to get the engine notes right. And I love that old world approach to what then was the pinnacle of gaming technology.
Yeah, it was artistry as much as it was, putting in the work. Yeah, incredible stuff.
Yeah, and that whole era was like just a perfect storm with that game coming out. And I remember World Rally car was starting to be shown on old Speed Vision, so that got me introduced to WRXs and STIs, which I fell in love with. And then there's the whole Fast and Furious that really mainstreamed this modifying culture. And yeah, it was just like everyone in Top Gear, like everyone was into cars for a while, and then kind of petered out. But that's fine. Now you just got the real enthusiasts left.
Well, so that actually kind of leads me to the next question, though, which is, you're saying your daughter is getting into cars and she's got her own Miata. What do you see as? Do you think that new generation coming up really does have an interest in cars? Do you think it'll survive? And also, like, how is it different?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because for my, I got do the math. I got my license in 1984. So for me, that was a coming of age moment. It was something that symbolized freedom. And, it's what every child and parent, your parent nurtures you, and then you eventually have to leave the nest. But it was your first opportunity to leave a nest. You could drive to a concert. You could, take a girl out on a date. You could do, it was your own space, and your own, just everything about it just represented freedom and expression of personal expression and the modifications that I did to my vehicles. And now, not so much. I mean, it's like we're at a world where kids are more self-involved, I'll say, and the internet has done that, and the screens that we're communicating on right now. It makes it like, why do you need to go out and see the world? You could watch a show tonight that is a hologram of Tupac Shakur who passed years ago. It's like, you don't even need to go to the real show. So that different type of immersion, I think, is changing. But with that said, I don't want to say that I weep for the future yet, because I have two daughters. I'm a proud girl dad, and I have an 18-year-old who's just dyed in the wool, like tearing apart everything on her car. And I'm always going to like Flying Miata or Moss Miata and buying like all sorts of little parts and sending them to her. And she's doing all the modifications herself. Her and her younger sister live in Colorado, and I'm still in Los Angeles. And so they live with their mother. And I go with her to her meets, and people will say to me, "Hey, were you really that guy from Hoonigan?" And I'll say, "Yeah, I was." And I kind of wait to like be ushered around the show, and they'll go, "Cool." And they'll grab my daughter and go, "Let me show you what I did to my car." And they'll just take off and ditch me and like live their own lives, and seeing the somewhat cringy modifications that they're doing to their cars, but it's the same stuff that we would do to our cars when we were young, plastic dip wheels and, rattle can paint jobs and everything else. And I like that. I like seeing that there is a generation that is still involved in cars as much as, if we look at like the entire iteration of the Miata, it started off as a great driver's car that somehow became known as the hairdresser's car, which was, a terrible and horribly dated reference at this point. And then it became like the autocrosser's car, a hard dog roll cage, some 15-inch wheels, and some good stance. And then it became the stance kid's car, and it became super cambered out and like slammed to the ground and everything. And now I think it's coming back around to like tasteful modifications. So I think if you look at like the Miata as a glimpse of like the way transportation is evolving and the way kids are doing their cars, there is a generation out there, and there is a subsect that likes to do those modifications. But with that said, you can't make as many horrible mistakes with a 2026 Civic that you can with a 1996 Civic. It's like, and with the price you can get into a 1996 Civic now is like, oh, I have that with the money that I make at Wendy's. On the weekends, I could buy that 1996 Civic and figure out if I could buy these rep wheels or these horrible Lambo doors or whatever, or this loud exhaust that I want to put on it. So my hope is that there is a future for this, for the generations. And when I talk about my daughters, my second daughter could care less about driving, doesn't want anything to do with it, knows I did something in cars, could not give a flying F about it. And, but she loves the music that I like, 90s grunge and, Nirvana and Pearl Jam and like old school hip hop and, NWA and Wu-Tang. And I'm like, okay, there's hope for this one. And when I asked her, what kind of car do you want? She says, I don't know, and I go, do you want like a little Honda Civic? And she's all, no. And I said, okay. And she goes, I don't know what it is, but I want this. And she shows me her phone, and it's a picture of a 1970 Chevelle SS, and I'm like, okay, well, the car that dad could afford will be on blocks in the driveway. And I go, I couldn't get you one that would be safe for you. And she goes, okay, maybe this. And she shows me a Smokey and the Bandit Screaming Chicken Trans Am, and I'm like, kind of a malaise car, but still like tons of soul there, And then she wants a second generation El Camino or a C6 Corvette. And I'm like, oh my God, you have so much better soul than I do. But I love seeing that at least she has like a desire to have a cool looking car. So I'm hopeful for the next generation, but not going to lie, it's becoming more challenged with the technology of the vehicles that we have and the price of admission for the vehicles today. And also not only that, I mean, just talking about the self-driving elephant in the room is autonomous vehicles are coming whether we like it or not. I in my other life, I was on a show called The Inevitable with Johnny Lieberman and Ed Lowe. And Johnny's like an incredibly smart, wonderfully accomplished journalist doing his own YouTube channel now, soaring to tremendous heights. And I got in a fight with him where I said, well, debate. And I said, Johnny's very opinionated too, where I said, autonomous is coming. He goes, it will never come. And I'm like, I feel like that's a closed-minded approach. It's the same thing with, horse and carriage. When the first automobile came, the horse rider said, this horse is so much faster than that car. It's so much better than that car. It could pull more than that car. We could pull an entire wagon with 6 people in it, and it can get you to any destination where the car is limited by the amount of fuel that you can put into it. The car runs slow, it's loud, it's noisy, it's not there. And now look at that transition that happened. And I will liken that to what we're going to be seeing in a few years. Horses used to be a beast of burden. And now a little girl wants nothing more than a horse for her 16th birthday. And for me, like I'm seeing like now, Miata used to be just a disposable car. And I think going forward, that's going to be the car that the 16-year-old kid asks their parents to keep at their ranch, because that's where the cars will be kept, is like these big, beautiful, like condominiums, these big, garage mahals that are at these country club racetracks. That's the only place you're going to be able to drive, because once L5 autonomous vehicles come through, we're not going to be able to drive, because the humans are going to be too slow to respond. They're going to be doing 160 miles an hour, bumper to bumper on the highway, safe, easy. You could summon whatever you want. I want a car to take me to Home Depot that carries all of the lumber that I need. I want a car that can take me and my 10 friends out for a night, a dinner out. I want a car that'll get me to commute. I want a car that will take me camping, and you could summon whatever car you want. And I think it's going to be where people won't even own cars. People won't even drive cars. And to me, that's a sad, sad future. And I'm glad I'll be, either my ashes will be scattered somewhere, or I'll be, a hot mess buried underneath a racetrack somewhere, which is where I'd like to be buried.
Yeah, let's just hope that doesn't come sooner than later.
I hope it's a long way.
We need to wrap things up, because this episode's going pretty long. We could talk forever. We definitely will want to have you back on the show. There's so many topics that you brought up that I want to get into that I can't, like how you're talking about kids, like the stuff I did to cars back in the day, and more so my friends and the older people were like, why are you
blame other people?
Well, I didn't put a body kit on my car because I couldn't afford it. Pretty much that's the reason. Like, why are you putting a body kit on a Grand Am? Why do you have spinners on a Civic? Like, just we thought it was cool. So that's why I can't really fault the kids today, because we were all there. But it's been great talking to you. And like I said, there's so much more we can chat. We'd love to have you on again sometime soon.
I'd love to do it, man. Appreciate the time. Thanks for letting me ramble on with my old man rants and stay off my lawn with the new Civic Type R sort of stuff.
But we had an optimistic note there with the next generation, so we're good. We're gold.
I do. I don't weep for our future. I pray for it, and I hope the best for it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks a lot.
I can't wait for our sequel.
Yeah. Same.
Talk to you again soon.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
All right, welcome back to the Auto Guide Show, brought to you by eBay Motors. Colum is back to talk F1. Now we're in the middle of the break, and there isn't too much news happening right now. So let's do something a little different. What are we going to do?
I think we should take a look. It's the break. It's a halfway point. Let's look back at the season and see the highs and lows. What's the highs and sides? What did you like best? What are the best sort of things going on in the business for the teams, the drivers, and what's the worst? What are the crappy points of the season so far? Yeah. So maybe I can lead you off with a high. It seems kind of obvious, but the Hulkenberg podium was a great high. It was such a, I don't know, warm and fuzzy feeling for the year. There's I guess he's sticking around for a while longer, but it was just nice to finally see him grab that podium. I remember very vividly watching. I'm pretty sure it was a German Grand Prix, and it was like one of those rain-soaked ones where I was back when Vettel was racing, and they really thought he was going to get it, and he just like lost it right near the end. And it was so close, and that was years ago. And at that point, it felt like it had been forever. So it was nice to finally see that happen for him.
Yeah, you never know if you'll get another chance. Like back in the day when McLaren wasn't that good, Norris, same thing in the rain, and lost that race, and you're like, well, that was his one chance ever, but things changed.
They did.
That whole team actually has been impressive this year, especially lately. They were kind of the ultimate pack runner, and now it's not like they're competitive for the wins, but all the sort of back runner teams are decent now, which is kind of good. It used to be, it'd be like 2 teams or so every year that were just woefully uncompetitive. But
yeah. That was actually another one of my, in a sense, one of my highs was the rookies, and in this sense, like Bortoleto, I think like he's proven very lately to like he's actually been outperforming Hulkenberg, which is interesting, and he's been surprisingly good. I think in a pretty far back marker car, right? So I think that's great. But otherwise, like I think went into the season thinking about rookies are going to crash all the time. There's been some mistakes for sure, right? But on the whole, I think that group like Hadjar. Sure, like Kimi, he's actually struggled a bit recently, but he had a really great start to the season. I'm sure he'll do well again. Behrman's been solid. I'm super impressed.
Oh no, wait.
Oh yeah.
Although he did pretty well. That was kind of a premature leave. But to your Kimi point, Mercedes as a whole has been struggling more lately, like George as well. So
yes,
it's not a Kimi thing. I think it's more of a team thing.
It's not.
Another high. I mean, I'm just kind of saying the same thing as you are, but is Behrman's team, Haas. They have been pretty competitive, both drivers at various races. Sometimes they're not at all, but sometimes they're right in there, in Q3 and qualifying, which is pretty impressive because last year Haas just looked lost.
Yes, they did. Well, and I think they were lost. It was obviously time for a change, and I think sometimes new management just sometimes you just need everyone working in the team just decides, okay, well, we're going to give the new guy a shot and we're going to give it our all and we go for it. And sometimes, a little bit of change of strategy. I think the team, I'm confident, was just a chaos, from top to bottom before. Gunter Steiner, as hilarious as he was watching, if that attitude was, like, and really, like, would you want to work for somebody like that? Imagine, like, I know the other guys are like, you could get a feeling that Christian Horner and Toto Wolff are pretty ruthless, but they're civilized ruthless, right? Like, versus, I think he's probably just uncivilized and ruthless at the same time. It'd be pretty hard to work there.
So, why don't you give me one of your lows? Then I got sort of a lows that ties into a high.
Okay, my low is got to be Hamilton's move to Ferrari, right? Like, it is just not panned out how they hoped it would. I actually just saw a quote this morning from him at the Hungary race saying that he was he said something about there'll be some tears over the summer break. I was like, oh crap, that's brutal. Like, it just like Ferrari hasn't been as good as I think anybody hoped they would be, and Lewis has struggled. So that's like double problems. Like, Charles is doing okay, but wow, like just not what this was planned out to be. And I can't say, like, I'm not super surprised. I feel like, I always, people, whenever they think of Ferrari, they think of Michael Schumacher Ferrari, and that's not what the team is. That's just, they haven't been that. They weren't that before, and they haven't been that since. And we shouldn't think of them as this dominant force. It was really Schumacher that made them that way, and that's it. So that's my
way back in the day, they were amazing in like 60s, 70s, and that's sort of what everyone that was their legacy and sort of their legendary status. And then you're right, they weren't great for a long time, and then Schumacher's era made them amazing, and then they've been trying to get back there. It's funny, I don't even think Hamilton's that upset with how poorly the team's doing, in a sense. Like, it's a letdown. He came from Mercedes that was struggling, and basically it's just gone laterally. Like, they had it's like, he probably thought, this is I'm going to do better, everything, I'm going to better this, better that, and it's just the same thing, new face. Like, Ferrari's second in the manufacturer's championship. They're a couple points ahead of Mercedes, but they're more than double the points behind McLaren, which just shows how dominant that team's been. And I'm going to get to them in a second, but this is sort of a low, which sounds odd, but at the end of last season and start of this season, I thought Williams was going to be the team that's going to be the mid-pack, sort of separate itself from the low teams. It wouldn't be with the top four. It doesn't have the money or the resources. And at the start of the season, it kind of seemed like that. Like, they're going to consistent top 10s. And I mean, they're still fifth in points. I have it up right now. They have 70 points. And then Red Bull, which we'll get to later too, is in fourth at 192. And sixth is Kick Sauber, to our point. Like, that team's so overperforming, and they're at 43. So they are somewhat separated, but they're much closer to the bottom five than I expected them to be. They did not separate themselves from the crowd, and I think as the season goes on, some of those teams are going to catch up. And I wonder how much money, if you went to one of those betting sites at the start of the year and said Kick Sauber's going to have more points than Racing Bulls and Aston Martin, how much money you could have made.
Yeah, I bet a ton. I totally agree with you. They really, and we thought, especially the Albon Sainz combo, they actually seemed like everything was moving in the right direction. Sainz has just not performed, right? Like, he started off again okay, and it's just fallen apart. And Albon has struggled, and it's always that gap, right? You can get a feeling with like a Kick Sauber or somebody that like they figured out something halfway through the season. Some setup they have works, and I actually have a fear here for the rest of the season that teams are just not going to invest. So I feel like I read something that Ferrari just said, this is it, like no more development. I find that hard to believe, but like, I think a lot of teams would normally at this point of the season, they would certainly make the sort of the decision, are we going to focus on next year's car versus this year, right? Sorry, but this year it's even more so because next year's everything changes.
Yeah, the top teams, like, you're not going to invest to try to catch McLaren. That's a foregone conclusion at this point. But you wonder, I know there's money difference in where you place. So Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, even Ferrari to Red Bull's almost 60 points now. So that's kind of gapping out. But Ferrari and Mercedes, how much do you want to spend for the difference in money? Now the bottom guys, I mean, Alpine's in last at 20 points. And then sixth Kick Sauber at 43. So I could see those guys still investing a bit, because you're talking probably several $1 million different prize money if you're 10th to even 7th. So
yep.
But at the same time, like you said, if you're already like the Racing Bulls, the Red Bulls, maybe even Ferraris, are like, well, why invest? We are where we are, and let's look at next year.
Yeah. So you got another negative for me, another low, or another? I've got some.
I got some lows. Okay, I'll do my low first, and I know it's based off yours, and I'll let you do the second half. My first low is just Red Bull, the team. The chaos. I mean, Christian Horner out. Newey left last year. They lost the manufacturers constructors championship by a couple points last year, and everyone thought they'd be in the thick of it again this year. McLaren would probably win. Well, I don't think anyone saw McLaren dominating this much, and Red Bull becoming a distant fourth. Like, they're not going to fall to fifth or anything, but there's. The team's just disarray, and I mean, I don't think there's anyone out there that would disagree that if they didn't have Max, they would be way worse off. Like, he's driving way beyond that car's ability, and some pulls he gets, like, even other drivers, like, remember Alonso was like, no one else could have done that.
Yeah,
and I agree.
No, I think you're right. It's definitely was on my list of lows too, right? Like that, and the Tsunoda aspect, and that's where I feel like I don't want to crap on Tsunoda too much. I'm not sure it would matter. We've been through how many drivers now? Like 4 or 5 drivers all delivered a similar result. Perez was briefly doing reasonably well. I don't think it matters who they put in that car. So I wouldn't really crap on Tsunoda for it. I think it's, but Red Bull's just been a total disaster.
And it's not like, oh, they just couldn't handle the car, but it's fast. I mean, go all the way back to Gasly. He goes somewhere else and he started doing better. This year, Lawson, he was doing better in the Racing Bull than he was in the Red Bull. So there is something there. It's not that these guys don't have the ability. And I bet if Perez was driving something, he'd be doing better now too.
I bet he would, yeah.
It could be the whole way the team set up, the strategy, the atmosphere, who knows what. But there's something not right there.
Yeah. I'll give you a high now, a positive, rare high. Just a highlight of the season for me. I thoroughly enjoyed the Max Verstappen passing Piastri at that first corner at the Emilio Romano Grand Prix. That was came from way behind. Especially it was I don't know. It wasn't what was expected. For a team like that's been struggling, and sort of Max has brought the only. Well, I guess there's been some excitement between the Piastri. Norris challenge, but I think that Max has brought a little bit of excitement in there to kind of try and keep them honest. But I thoroughly enjoyed that pass. I thought that was pretty wicked.
So with my eyes, I guess I'll go with what you're leading into with McLaren. So at the end of last year, they were the best team. They won the manufacturers, and they couldn't catch up to the drivers quite in time. And I think everyone expected they'd be the best team this year, but some people are like, oh, we're going to enter the McLaren era, which sadly could be 1 year because everything changes next year. And others are like, no, they'll probably win, but it'll be close. But this clearly is the McLaren era, at least this year. Like I said, they've doubled everyone in constructor points. Their 2 drivers are 1 and 2 in the championship by a good chunk. They're both usually competitive unless Norris takes himself out. It's almost a foregone conclusion every race. Okay, well, Norris and Piastri are going to be in the top 5, probably top 3. Who else is going to join them?
Yeah.
So, and on leading into that, the biggest high, I think, of the year for me is Piastri. Like, everyone assumed Norris would win the championship this year, and he would, be a second runner-up, and he's outperformed him more so. And it's not even he's just outperformed him. I think Norris is faster when he's on, but Piastri is so consistent. And every race, in and out, he's
and not rattled by all the problems. He just pushes on. He's calm, which is amazing for he really is very young if you think about it, right? Like for to be coming in. So it's we'll see if the McLaren era lasts for more than a year and a bit. Very well could, or it could be like a flash in the pan, which would be strange almost if that happened. But I guess all the more reason all the more reason to grasp it while you can, right? Like, I think that's it. Like, you may never get an opportunity. Like, it's entirely like Verstappen could never win a championship again. It's entirely possible. Like, there's all of those things. I think. It's funny to see even the excitement levels of, like, when Verstappen was winning all the time, like, he just even wanted, after it finishes a race, gets out of the car, it was like he expected to win, no problem, right? And then you see these like gaps of a long period of time, and then he wins a race, and you can hear how excited he is because, like, oh yeah, like, and I think Vettel said something once, like, this may never happen again, right? Like savor it while you got the chance. So I hope they savor it. I know I sure would.
I think it's funny too how all these eras, like Red Bull, Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, they always had like the dominant driver, and usually their second driver was second in the championship, but it was like, this is the guy who's going to win, this guy's going to back up. The last time I could think of a team that was so dominant and they had 2 drivers that either could win any given weekend was McLaren in the 80s, and it was Senna and Prost. I mean, these guys aren't at that level, but it's very similar where you don't know who's going to win between the 2 of them. You assume one of them's going to win, but you don't know which one. There's no team orders or nothing, and it's been interesting.
Good time to be a McLaren fan, that's for sure.
Yeah. So, do you got one more before we wrap this up?
No, I think that's everything on my list.
All right, me too. So we will be back next week, and hopefully there will be some more news. We'll kind of cover anything that's happened between now and then, and maybe George has a contract. We'll find out.
Maybe I'll just make up some rumors.
Yeah. Let's see, Kyle Busch to Cadillac for F1. There we go.
Sold. Started here. You heard it here
All
first.
right. Thanks for joining us. See you later.
Bye.
All right, so that just about wraps things up on the Auto Guide Show, brought to you by eBay Motors. So this week, you already alluded to what you're driving, so why don't you start?
Yes, I'll let you cover our comparison. So I am double booked. I have the Mercedes AMG E53. I didn't know this or forgot it, that it is seriously different this year. So it is a plug-in hybrid powertrain because AMG is getting into that sort of thing. It's a 3-liter inline 6, but it also has an electric motor. So I'm getting over 600 horsepower and actual decent electric range. That's the important difference with a 53. The 63 with the 4-cylinder, the plug-in hybrid is basically just, it's a push to pass kind of button of like, oh, you get an immediate boost of a little bit of power, but we measure the EV range in meters. So this, I haven't driven it much because you'll explain why very soon. But so far, I think I like it because the new E-Class, as we've talked about on previous episodes, is really good. And it does take to the sportier models in a way that feels pretty natural. So far, really enjoying it. I think it's a nice, different approach to luxury sedans.
I start calling you fancy, Kyle. I just realized I haven't driven a new E-Class or a new 5 Series or some Porsches. Kyle always just happens to get them with the timing of things, so I need to get used to these cars again, because I was like, you're talking about this and I'm like, is it good? I can't remember last time I drove an E-Class or even a C-Class we drove. We did a comparison about 2 years ago, but anything else besides the C-Class. I don't think I've driven a Mercedes in a while. I gotta change that.
A GLC.
Oh yes, and a CLA. Yes, I do the small guys.
Yeah. I think you're hitting your strengths. I think that's the thing, is you were like, the CLA was really like your thing. You enjoyed that.
45. 400 horsepower. Yeah, no, I want to drive one of these big guys again because I love the E-Class back in the day, and they've just consistently made it good. So I'm going to take the next E-Class. I'm calling it out. All right. So with the comparison you alluded to, we did 4Runner versus Wrangler a month ago.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know.
And we've kind of focused, on the sensible, practical, everyday off-roader and what makes more sense. So this time we got their siblings with beds. We got the Tacoma and we got the Gladiator, and we're focusing more on what's fun. And you might think, well, easy, the Gladiator, it's got an open bed and a roof that comes off and it does cheap things. Well, my Tacoma is the 6-speed manual, which is only offered in, I believe, 2 trims. And it's a rare sort of combination, and it has the 2.4 turbo, not the hybrid. So we won't get into any more details than that, but it was interesting. It was a little eye-opening, more so than just because your paint kind of blinds people when it drives by. It is the greenest green I've ever seen.
I'm not sure if it should really be called Mojito Green, but no, whatever. It's fun.
So then next week is another busy week. Somehow we both double booked ourselves. So I will have a new gen Taos. You went on the first drive. I did not. We almost bought one a couple years ago. We're looking to potentially buy one again. Biggest complaint was DCT. And it's dead. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be a family vehicle. And on the other side, we talked about it a little bit today. I'm going to get the Escalade, but the gas one. And we haven't driven the new generation. So I look forward to that because I have driven a lot of the big luxury full-size SUVs, the Grand Wagoneer, and a very brief encounter with the Navigator. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this because I've kind of appreciated them, but they have gotten even bigger, it seems. So that's my week. What are you in next week?
Next week I am I'm living up to the fancy thing, aren't I? I am in a Porsche 911T, the only regular, I say regular with big emphasis, the only regular 911 that you can get with a stick currently. So it is the 6-speed manual. The 7-speed is gone. And that should be interesting because we haven't really driven the new 911 outside of a convertible earlier this year. So the facelift is different, and manual is, the enthusiast model. And then I go to a different German sort of ridiculousness. I try the new Geländewagen with EQ technology, the G580. I've never driven any G-Class, and this is the EV. So I'm very much looking forward to it. It's going to be ridiculous. Yeah, I'm going to have to try and find somewhere damp or dusty to do a tank turn. But yeah, I need to see what it's all about. And just like the Escalade, I have the sneaking suspicion that it probably makes a ton of sense as an EV, right? Because why not?
Well, Mercedes can't build enough, it seems, of those things in certain markets.
Yeah.
The 63 is the only one I drove, and that's about 12 years ago, and old generation. But I remember the funniest thing, it was a 63. The side pipes usually can just blast V8 noise off of people you pass on the highway. And the windows are so low compared to the height of the seats that the people in the back seat feel like they're going to literally slide out of the car in corners if they have the window open. So yeah, good times.
Fine.
Yeah, so that's our week. We'll have some more news and reviews, and I'm looking forward to hearing how the 6-speed and the 911 differs from the 7-speed and why they went with it and where it came from, because that seems like an odd choice. Remember 7-speeds were looking like to be all a thing, 911 Corvette, and you're like, oh, it's the new norm, and then they both said nope.
Yeah, so, and now there's only one left, the Bronco.
Yeah. The ball cart.
Yeah,
and its days are probably numbered. So yeah, we will talk about that next week. We'll leave myself and all of our listeners in suspense. Well, probably won't talk about it next week, whenever we get to it. But
Yeah.
until then, this has been the Auto Guide Show, and we will talk to you later.
So long, everybody.
eBay has reinvented car buying. From click to curb, everything is covered. Ever try to buy your car online and end up in a parking lot with a stranger on blind trust? That era is over. Now with Secure Purchase, eBay isn't just where you find your car, it's where you buy it, start to finish. Title, financing, registration, delivery, it's all built in. This is the modern way to buy your next ride on eBay. eBay, things people love. Secure Purchase is powered by Carmel Dealer Services, LLC, an eBay subsidiary.